Let me introduce you to the main characters in this story. I'm Joanna, and I often found myself consumed by my job. My husband's name is Mark. He's a patient and understanding man. Together, we have a lovely daughter named Lily, a curious bundle of joy who is growing up faster than we could keep up with. And then there's Evelyn, Mark's mother. She's been a part of my life since I married her son, but I can't say we were very close. You see, I was always busy with work, trying to make ends meet and provide for my family. That left me with very little time for visits, especially to Mark's childhood home. Evelyn, on the other hand, wasn't much of an outgoing person. She preferred the comfort of her home over going out, and Mark always said it was because she was often ill. One evening, as I was rushing through another hectic day, I had an epiphany. Lily was growing up fast, and I felt she should get to know her grandmother better. It wasn't fair that she hardly knew Evelyn, and I needed to make amends for my long absence. I mentioned my idea to Mark, who smiled warmly and agreed that it was long overdue. "She's your family too, after all," he said, always the voice of reason. So, despite my never-ending to-do list, we decided to pay Evelyn a visit. It had been a while, and I wanted to make up for lost time. As we drove to her house, I couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and nervousness. I had spent so little time with her, and I wasn't entirely sure what to expect. When we arrived at her house, it was clear that it hadn't seen a dust rag in ages. Cobwebs clung to the corners, and a thick layer of dust covered everything. It was a mess, to say the least. Lily, always candid, wrinkled her nose in disgust and asked, "Mommy, why is Grandma's house so dirty?" I exchanged a glance with Mark, who chuckled softly. "Well, we're here to fix that, aren't we?" Lily nodded, and we rolled up our sleeves, grabbed some cleaning supplies, and got to work. We scrubbed and dusted, swept, and mopped, while Evelyn watched with a mix of surprise and gratitude. She hadn't expected us to clean her house, and that made our efforts all the more meaningful. As the sun began to set, we decided to call it a day. We'd done a good job, and I was proud of what we'd achieved. It felt like the right step towards bridging the gap between Evelyn and me. Little did I know that this visit would be the start of something unexpected, something that would change everything for our family. After our first visit to Evelyn's place, things began to change. I could see that Lily and Evelyn were warming up to each other, and that made me happy. It was a small step in the right direction. A few weeks later, I decided to take another day off from work to spend time with my family and help Evelyn around the house. It was a weekend, and I wanted to make our visits a regular thing. So I packed up some cleaning supplies, and Lily and I headed over to Evelyn's place again. This time, as we walked through the front door, I could see the surprise on Evelyn's face. She hadn't expected us to return so soon. "We're here to help, Evelyn," I said with a warm smile. Lily chimed in, her eyes shining with enthusiasm. "Yeah, Grandma, we're going to make your house all pretty." Evelyn hesitated for a moment before nodding gratefully. "Thank you, both of you. I appreciate it more than you know." We got to work just like last time, dusting, cleaning, and tidying up. As we worked, Evelyn joined in, and we started talking more than we ever had. It felt good to chat and share stories while we worked. Lily, always full of questions, asked Evelyn about her favorite things. "What's your favorite color, Grandma?" she asked with genuine curiosity. Evelyn smiled. "I've always loved the color blue. It reminds me of the sea, and I find it very calming." Lily nodded, taking in this newfound information. "Blue is nice. I like it too." As the hours passed, we tackled one room after another. I could see Evelyn becoming more comfortable around us. She started reminiscing about Mark's childhood, sharing stories that made us laugh. It was like discovering a whole new side of her. By the time we finished, the house looked entirely different. It was cleaner and brighter, and Evelyn looked at it with a mixture of surprise and gratitude. She said, "I can't remember the last time my house looked this good. Thank you, Joanna, and thank you, Lily." Lily beamed, and I felt a warmth in my heart. Our efforts were paying off, and it seemed like Evelyn was genuinely enjoying our company. I knew we were on the right path, slowly but surely building a stronger bond between us. Little did I know that this simple act of helping out would lead to a series of events that would shake our family to its core. A few more weeks went by, and our visits to Evelyn's house became a regular thing. It was nice seeing her more often, and Lily seemed to adore her grandmother more with each visit. We'd spend our weekends cleaning, chatting, and sometimes even cooking together. One evening, after a particularly productive day of cleaning, we decided to head home as the sun dipped below the horizon. Lily and I climbed into the car, and I started the engine. I felt a sense of contentment, knowing that our family was slowly coming closer together. As we drove down the quiet, winding road, I couldn't help but think about how our relationship with Evelyn was improving. It was then that something unexpected happened. The car started to act strangely, swerving and jerking. Panic welled up inside me as I struggled to regain control. Lily cried out from the back seat, her tiny voice trembling, "Mommy, what's happening?" I gripped the steering wheel, my heart pounding in my chest. "Hold on, Lily," I said, my voice shaky but determined. I fought to keep the car on the road as it veered dangerously close to a tree. It felt like a lifetime in those few moments. Miraculously, we managed to avoid the tree and come to a stop by the side of the road. My hands were trembling as I turned off the engine and took a deep breath. Lily and I were both shaken, but we were unharmed. I hugged her tightly, thankful that we had escaped without a scratch. After ensuring Lily was okay, I got out of the car to inspect the damage. It didn't take long to see what had gone wrong. All 4 of our tires had been slashed. My heart sank as I realized that someone had deliberately done this to us. Lily asked with a quiver in her voice, "Mommy, what happened to the car?" I crouched down to her level, trying to put on a reassuring smile. "Don't worry, sweetie. It looks like someone did something to our tires, but we're safe." I knew I needed to call for help, but I was also beginning to feel a creeping sense of unease. Who would do such a thing? Why would someone want to hurt us? As I reached for my phone to dial for assistance, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than just a random act of vandalism. It felt personal, and I couldn't help but wonder if our newfound connection with Evelyn had something to do with it. As I stood by the side of the road, staring at our slashed tires, a growing unease settled in my stomach. It just didn't make sense. Who would want to harm us, especially when we were on our way back from helping Evelyn? The thought of someone targeting my daughter and me was chilling. Lily, sensing my distress, asked, "Mommy, why would someone do this to our car?" I crouched down again, trying to find the right words. "I don't know, sweetheart. It's a mean thing for someone to do, but don't worry, we'll get through this." I dialed the roadside assistance number, and they promised to send help soon. While waiting, I examined the tires more closely. It was evident that they had been deliberately slashed with a sharp object. This wasn't just a random act of mischief. Someone had meant to hurt us. The minutes ticked by slowly, and my thoughts kept circling back to the same question. Who could be behind this? I couldn't come up with a plausible answer. Evelyn had been kind during our recent visits, and there was no reason for her to want to harm us. When the tow truck finally arrived, the driver assessed the damage and confirmed that the tires had been intentionally slashed. He changed them for us, and as we continued our journey home, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Once we arrived home, I decided to take a closer look at the surveillance cameras that were installed around Evelyn's house. Maybe they had captured something that could provide a clue. Lily watched curiously as I reviewed the footage on my laptop. As we scrolled through the recordings, my heart skipped a beat. There it was. The shocking moment when someone had approached our car and slashed the tires. My hands trembled as I replayed the video, and I couldn't believe my eyes. Lily pointed at the screen, her voice trembling. "Mommy, who's that?" I swallowed hard as I recognized the figure in the video. It was Evelyn. She had slashed our tires while we were inside her house. My mind reeled in disbelief. Why would she do such a thing? I closed the laptop, my thoughts in turmoil. I needed answers, and I needed them fast. Lily looked up at me, her innocent eyes filled with confusion and fear. I knew I had to confront Evelyn about what we had discovered, but I couldn't predict what would happen next. The revelation from the surveillance footage had left me in a state of shock. Why would Evelyn, Mark's own mother, slash our car tires? I needed answers, and I needed them fast. I decided to wait until Mark got home to discuss this with him. As I nervously paced the living room, Lily played with her toys, unaware of the turmoil in her mother's mind. When Mark finally arrived, I wasted no time in telling him everything I had discovered. "Mark," I began, my voice trembling, "you won't believe what I found on the surveillance footage. It was your mother who slashed our car tires when we were at her house." Mark's eyes widened in disbelief. "What? That can't be right. My mother wouldn't do something like that." I handed him my laptop and played the footage. As he watched the video, his face grew paler and he seemed torn between denial and acceptance. Lily tugged at her father's sleeve, her voice filled with worry. "Daddy, why did Grandma do that?" Mark struggled to find the right words as he looked down at our daughter. I don't know, Lily. We need to talk to Grandma and find out." As the reality of the situation sank in, I felt a surge of anger and fear. I needed to know the truth and protect my family. "We can't just ignore this, Mark. Someone wanted to hurt us. We have to go to the police." But Mark hesitated, his voice filled with uncertainty. "I think we should talk to Mom first. Try to understand why she did this." I was torn between wanting answers and fearing the consequences of involving the police. "All right," I conceded reluctantly, "but we need to do it soon." That night, Mark and I lay in bed, unable to sleep. The knowledge of Evelyn's actions weighed heavily on both of us. I wondered if there was something more to this than met the eye. Mark's silence spoke volumes, and I couldn't help but feel that he was keeping something from me. Finally, he confessed, "Joanna, there's something you need to know. My mother, she's been struggling with a mental illness, schizophrenia." I gasped, my heart sinking. "Schizophrenia? Why didn't you tell me before?" Mark's eyes filled with regret. "I didn't think it would ever become a problem like this. She's usually stable, but sometimes she has episodes." I couldn't wrap my head around it. My mother-in-law, schizophrenic? It explained her erratic behavior, but it also left me wondering about the extent of her condition and whether it posed a danger to us. As we lay there in the dark, I couldn't help but feel a growing sense of unease. The web of secrets and uncertainty surrounding our family was getting more tangled by the minute. Mark's revelation about his mother's schizophrenia had left me with a whirlwind of emotions. It explained the inexplicable slashing of our car tires, but it also opened a Pandora's box of questions. I knew we needed answers, and we needed them urgently. The next day, after dropping Lily off at school, Mark and I decided to confront Evelyn. We needed to understand the full extent of her condition and her motives behind the act that had endangered our lives. We arrived at Evelyn's house, and Mark knocked on the door. She answered, and her face brightened when she saw us. "Mark, Joanna, what brings you here today?" she asked warmly. Mark took a deep breath, his voice hesitant. "Mom, we need to talk. It's important." Evelyn's smile faded as she sensed the gravity of the situation. We sat down in the living room, and Mark began, "Mom, Joanna found out about the car tires. She saw it on the surveillance cameras." Evelyn's face grew tense, and she avoided eye contact. I don't know what you're talking about." I couldn't contain my frustration anymore. "Evelyn, we have the footage. It was you who did it. Why would you do that?" Tears welled up in her eyes, and her voice trembled. "I didn't want you to leave. I missed you both so much, and I thought if I did something to your car, you would have to stay a little longer." I felt a mix of sympathy and exasperation. It was clear that her actions were driven by her illness, but it didn't make them any less frightening. Mark put his arm around her, trying to comfort her as he said, "Mom, we understand that you missed us, but this wasn't the way to handle it." Evelyn nodded, her shoulders slumped in defeat. I know. I just didn't want to be alone." Mark and I exchanged worried glances. We knew Evelyn needed help beyond what we could provide. Mark gently asked, "Mom, have you been taking your medication regularly?" Evelyn hesitated, her gaze dropping to the floor. "Not as often as I should." Mark sighed, his concern deepening. "We're going to get you the help you need, Mom. We'll take you to see a doctor and get your medication sorted out." Evelyn nodded, tears still in her eyes. "Thank you, both of you. I'm so sorry for what I've done." As we left Evelyn's house that day, I couldn't help but feel a sense of relief that we were finally on the path to getting her the help she needed. But the journey was far from over. Our family had faced some dark and unexpected twists, and we were determined to support Evelyn as she battled her illness. Our family's journey took an unexpected turn with Mark's revelation about his mother's schizophrenia. It left me with a whirlwind of emotions, understanding, compassion, and a sense of responsibility. One evening, after Lily had gone to bed, Mark and I decided it was time to have a crucial conversation with Evelyn. We needed to discuss her treatment plan and address the incident with the slashed car tires. The atmosphere was tense as we sat down in her living room. Mark began carefully. "Mom, we've been discussing your treatment with a psychiatrist, and we're committed to helping you get better. But there's something else we need to talk about." Evelyn, her expression a mix of curiosity and apprehension, nodded and said, "I'm listening." I took a deep breath and said, "Evelyn, we reviewed the surveillance footage from the day our car tires were slashed. It showed that it was you who did it." Evelyn's face paled, and she looked down, unable to meet our eyes. After a moment of silence, she admitted, "Yes, it was me." My heart sank at her confession, and I couldn't help but ask, "But why, Evelyn? We thought you missed us?" Evelyn hesitated, tears welling up in her eyes. "I did miss you both terribly, but there's something I need to confess." Mark and I exchanged concerned glances. We had no idea what else might be lurking beneath the surface of this already complex situation. Evelyn took a deep breath, her voice shaking. "I didn't just slash the tires to make you stay longer. I did it because I was terrified of what I might do." Confusion and worry washed over me, and I asked, "Terrified of what, Evelyn?" Evelyn's voice quivered as she revealed, "There are times when my illness takes over. I hear voices, see things that aren't there. I was afraid that if you left, I might lose control and harm someone, maybe even you or Lily." My heart ached for Evelyn. She had been silently battling these inner demons, struggling with a reality that was beyond our understanding. Mark reached out, taking her hand gently, and said, "Mom, we had no idea. We're here for you, and we'll support you through this. We'll make sure you get the help you need." Evelyn nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you, both of you. I'm so sorry for everything." As we sat there, I realized the depth of the pain and fear Evelyn had been living with. It was a shocking revelation that explained so much, and it made me even more determined to help her on her journey to recovery. Our family had faced adversity, but we were stronger together and ready to face whatever lay ahead. Our family's journey had taken unexpected turns, and the revelation about Evelyn's schizophrenia had opened doors to a deeper understanding of her struggles. Our commitment to her well-being became our top priority. As weeks turned into months, our visits to Evelyn's house became more frequent. We ensured she took her medication, attended therapy sessions, and provided emotional support. Our family dynamic had transformed, and Evelyn was no longer just my mother-in-law. She was family, and her battle was our battle. One evening, as we gathered in her living room, reminiscing and sipping tea, my eyes fell upon an old, weathered box tucked away on a bookshelf. It was filled with faded photographs, letters, and postcards from Mark's younger days. Lily, always curious, joined me in exploring this treasure trove of memories. "Mommy, who are these people?" Lily asked, pointing at the photographs. I smiled. "These are your daddy's family, sweetie. These photos are from a long time ago." Evelyn watched us with a hint of nostalgia in her eyes. It was evident that this box held a significant place in her heart. As we continued to sift through the box, I discovered an old diary that belonged to Evelyn. It was worn and filled with handwritten pages. I opened it, and as I began to read, I realized that it held the key to a long-buried family secret. Evelyn noticed my expression and gently said, "Joanna, that diary holds the story of our family, a story that I've kept hidden for years." I looked at her, my curiosity piqued. "What kind of story, Evelyn?" She took a deep breath and began to recount the tale from her diary. It was a story of pain, loss, and a family torn apart by a dark secret. A secret that had haunted her for years. A secret that explained why she had been so determined to keep us close. As Evelyn spoke, her voice trembling with emotion, Mark and I listened intently, our hearts heavy with the weight of the revelation. The family secret unveiled before us was a reminder that our pasts are often more complicated than we can imagine, and that understanding and compassion were essential as we moved forward together. In that moment, as we confronted the truths of our family's history, I knew that our bonds had grown stronger. We were prepared to face the future as a united family, no matter what challenges lay ahead. Our journey had been filled with surprises and revelations, but it had ultimately led us to a deeper connection and a newfound appreciation for the strength of family ties.
I'm Sarah, and life for me had always been a high-wire act of sorts. In our family, there were a few key players: my husband Mark, our charming bundle of joy Liam, and the ever-present, sometimes overbearing Linda, my mother-in-law. These characters, well, they shaped the story of our lives in ways I couldn't have predicted. Linda, a quintessential grandma, was a constant presence. She had this knack for doting on Liam like he was the heir to a throne. Anytime I needed to dash off to one of those nerve-wracking job interviews, which felt like they were multiplying faster than rabbits, Linda was my go-to babysitter. She'd step in without a second thought, a beacon of reliability amidst my job-seeking chaos. Linda's past as a retired kindergarten teacher had always made me feel at ease, leaving Liam in her care. Her nurturing and loving demeanor had been a source of comfort, and it had seemed natural to rely on her when I needed help. Little did I know that the events that would unfold would challenge my trust in her and the delicate balance of our family. One bright, sunny day, my phone rang with a call that felt like a ray of hope breaking through the clouds. I had scored a job offer. The elation I felt was almost surreal. It wasn't just a job, it was a lifeline for our family. But as I shared the news with Mark and Linda, little did I know that this newfound stability would tip the scales in unexpected ways. Sitting around the worn kitchen table, I brought up the pressing matter of a car. With the new job, I'd need it for the daily commute. Seems reasonable, right? But then, Linda dropped a bombshell. "You're planning to spend all that money on a car?" Linda's voice was tinged with disbelief. "What about our anniversary trip to that lovely resort? I thought you and Mark were going to treat us." I blinked, bewildered by the sudden twist in the narrative. Linda seemed convinced that the money we were about to shell out for the car should have been spent on her anniversary getaway. It was a plot twist of epic proportions, and I wasn't prepared for it. "Mom," Mark interjected, trying to reason with her, "the car is essential for Sarah's job. We can't afford both right now." Linda wasn't backing down. "You're both being selfish," she snapped, the disappointment in her eyes weighing heavily on us. What started as a reasonable conversation soon turned into an intense argument, the tension palpable. Our family's delicate equilibrium had been disrupted, and we were teetering on the precipice of a tumultuous journey we couldn't foresee. So, after the argument about the car and the anniversary trip, things were pretty tense in our family. But amidst all the chaos and misunderstanding, there was a glimmer of hope. Let me tell you how the silver lining began to peek through. Mark and I knew we needed that car for my new job. We just couldn't afford to delay it any longer. We had long talks late into the night, trying to figure out how to make it work. It wasn't just about convenience. It was about securing a stable future for Liam and us. Linda, on the other hand, was still sulking. She wasn't speaking much to us, and when she did, it was often icy and curt. It was tough, no doubt about it. I missed the way things used to be, when Linda was like a second mother to me. One evening, after we'd put Liam to bed, Mark and I sat down to address the elephant in the room. We needed to find a way to mend things with Linda while staying true to our priorities. "Maybe we should talk to her again," Mark suggested cautiously. I nodded, feeling a bit apprehensive. "You're right. Let's try to make her understand our situation, Mark. It's not like we're denying her a trip on purpose." The next day, we approached Linda. Her initial reaction was still cold, but as we explained our reasons, her expressions started to soften. "I just thought you were putting your jobs ahead of family," Linda admitted, her voice tinged with regret. "Mom," Mark said gently, "we're doing this for Liam's future, too. We want the best for him." As the conversation continued, we realized that Linda had misunderstood our intentions. She thought we were neglecting her for our careers, when all we wanted was stability and security for our family. Slowly but surely, the rift began to heal. It wasn't an overnight transformation, but things got better. Linda understood our perspective, and we, in turn, made an effort to involve her more in our daily lives. We realized that family support was crucial, and we didn't want to lose that. The silver lining was that this challenging period helped us communicate better. As a family, it made us appreciate each other's roles and sacrifices. And as we moved forward, we hoped that this newfound understanding would help us navigate the trials that lay ahead. Little did we know that the story was far from over, and more challenges were yet to come. With our family on the mend after the car and trip argument, things started to look up. But, you know, life sometimes takes unexpected turns. This time, it came in the form of an unforeseen twist. Linda had always been a big part of our lives. She'd take care of Liam when we needed her, and we appreciated that. But after our heart-to-heart chat, things had changed. Linda seemed less involved, less like the grandma we knew. It was like a cold wind had swept through our family. One evening, we had another family dinner, but it felt different. Linda had a tense look on her face as she served the meal. Something was up, and I could feel it. As we sat down to eat, Linda hesitated, and then she just blurted it out. "I can't believe you're spending all that money on a car instead of our anniversary trip." Mark and I exchanged glances, stunned by her outburst. "Mom," Mark started, "we talked about this. The car is for Sarah's job, and it's important." Linda's eyes welled up, and I could see the hurt in her face. "I thought you cared about me," she said, her voice trembling. "We do care, Mom," I reassured her, "but this is about our family's future." That's when Linda dropped the bomb. "Fine. If you won't take us on the trip, I won't be able to afford to feed Liam anymore. I won't have extra money for his lunches." I felt my heart sink. She was using Liam as a pawn in our argument, and it was the last thing I expected. I couldn't believe she'd stoop so low. Mark was furious. "You can't do that, Mom. Liam is your grandson. You can't just stop taking care of him." But Linda was adamant. "I have to make sacrifices too," she said, her eyes filled with resentment. That dinner was one of the most uncomfortable moments of my life. We finished our meal in silence, and as we left, the tension hung heavy in the air. It was shocking to see how far things had escalated. Linda, who had always been a loving grandma, was now using Liam as a bargaining chip in our family dispute. This wasn't the Linda we knew, and it left us reeling. The delicate balance we had tried so hard to restore had once again been thrown into disarray. After the shock of Linda threatening to stop feeding Liam, our family life took a dark turn. It was like a thread had been pulled, and everything began to unravel. Liam was just a child, innocent and unaware of the tensions between us and his grandma. He still looked forward to visiting Linda, but as the days passed, he came home hungry and upset. I couldn't believe she was actually going through with it. Mark and I knew we had to have another conversation with Linda. It was clear that things couldn't continue this way. So we invited her over for dinner, hoping to find a resolution. As we sat down at the table, the atmosphere was heavy with unspoken tension. We didn't want to argue, but we couldn't let Linda's actions continue either. "Mom," Mark began cautiously, "we need to talk about Liam. He's hungry when he comes home, and it's not fair to him." Linda didn't back down. "I told you, I can't afford it with the money you're spending on that car." I could see the frustration in Mark's eyes. "Mom, you can't punish Liam like this. He's just a little boy." But Linda remained stubborn. "I have my needs too. You should be taking us on that trip." The conversation went in circles, and it became clear that Linda wasn't willing to budge. She saw this as a way to pressure us into funding her trip, and it was tearing our family apart. We left that dinner with heavy hearts, knowing that we had to protect Liam from this toxic situation. We decided not to take him to visit Linda anymore until this was resolved. It was a difficult decision, but we couldn't let our son be used as a pawn in this battle. Our family was unraveling, and we needed to find a way to put it back together. As days turned into weeks, our family remained at an impasse. The decision to stop taking Liam to visit Linda was one of the hardest choices we'd ever made. Liam, at such a tender age, didn't understand the intricacies of the conflict. He missed spending time with his grandma and kept asking when we were going to visit her again. It broke my heart to see him so confused and hurt. Mark and I would sit down and discuss our options late into the night. trying to find a solution. We knew that keeping Liam away from Linda was causing him pain, but we couldn't let her continue using him as a pawn. One evening, as Liam played with his toys, I looked at Mark with tear-filled eyes. I hate that we're doing this to him, but we can't let her manipulate us with his well-being. Mark nodded, his expression heavy with sadness. I know, Sarah. It's tearing me apart too, but we have to protect our son. And so, we continued to keep Liam away from Linda. It was an agonizing decision, but we hoped that it would force Linda to reconsider her actions. We were determined to make her understand that we couldn't be blackmailed into funding her trip. Weeks turned into months, and our communication with Linda remained sparse. The pain of not having her in our lives was immense, but we held firm in our belief that this was the only way to resolve the conflict. We hoped that eventually, Linda would come to see the error of her ways, and we could rebuild our family's trust. Little did we know that the next chapter in our story would bring an unexpected turn, one that would take place at Linda's anniversary party and would have repercussions we couldn't have predicted. Months had passed since we made the painful decision to keep Liam away from Linda. Our family remained divided, and it was clear that the rift was not going to heal easily. But as Linda's anniversary party approached, we had no idea just how significant that event would become. We debated whether or not to attend, but Mark felt it was important to show that we still cared about Linda, even though we disagreed with her actions. So, with mixed feelings, we decided to go. The party was a grand affair, filled with friends and family, all celebrating Linda's anniversary. The atmosphere was cheerful, but the tension between us was palpable. As the evening wore on, I noticed Linda watching us closely, her eyes filled with a mix of longing and resentment. It was as though she expected us to make amends by offering to fund her trip. I had had enough of the charade, and I decided it was time to make a statement. I took a plate of food and, without saying a word, I shared it with Liam. It was a small but deliberate act, and it spoke volumes. Other guests at the party began to notice and started asking questions. "Why is Liam eating separately?" one of Linda's friends inquired. I took a deep breath and decided it was time to tell the truth. Liam was going hungry because we couldn't afford his lunches after buying a car for my job. Linda thought we should have used that money for her anniversary trip. The shock on their faces was evident, and whispers began to spread throughout the room. Linda's attempt to manipulate us had been exposed, and the guests were not pleased. Linda tried to defend herself, but it was clear that her actions had crossed a line. The party atmosphere soured, and we left shortly after, with our heads held high. That night marked a turning point. We had stood up for ourselves and for Liam, and we had let the truth be known. It was a defiant act, one that would change the course of our relationship with Linda forever. In the aftermath of the party, we decided to cut ties with Linda altogether. The chapter of our lives that had revolved around her had come to an end, and we were ready to move forward as a family, free from manipulation and deceit. Months had passed since the painful rift between us and Linda. The decision to keep Liam away from his beloved grandma had weighed on our hearts every single day. Yet, as Liam's longing for her grew more palpable, Mark and I found ourselves reconsidering our stance. Liam would often ask about his grandma, wondering why we hadn't been to visit her. It was heart-wrenching to see him miss her so much. One evening, as he clutched his favorite stuffed animal, he looked up at us with big, questioning eyes. "Mama, Dada, when are we going to see Grandma again?" His innocent inquiry tugged at our heartstrings. Mark glanced at me, his expression filled with concern. It was a question we couldn't ignore any longer. "Sarah," he whispered, "maybe it's time to think about reconnecting with Linda." I hesitated, the memories of the pain Linda had caused us still fresh in my mind. But deep down, I knew that we couldn't keep Liam away from his grandma forever. We needed to find a way to bridge the gap. The decision was made, and we decided to reach out to Linda, inviting her to our home. It was a fragile step toward reconciliation, one filled with hope, but also trepidation. The day Linda came to visit, the air was thick with unresolved tension. As she entered our home, the awkwardness hung like a cloud, a stark contrast to the warm embraces that used to define our family gatherings. We exchanged polite greetings, but the weight of our past conflicts hung between us like an invisible barrier. As we settled in the living room, the silence felt suffocating. Over cups of tea, we finally began to talk. Mark and I shared our reasons for keeping Liam away and the pain it had caused us. Linda, for the first time, listened without interruption, her eyes filled with regret. "I never meant to hurt Liam," she admitted, her voice trembling. "I let my desire for that trip blind me to everything else." We took a deep breath and told Linda how important it was for us to protect our son from emotional manipulation. We made it clear that we wanted her to be a part of Liam's life, but on terms that respected our family's well-being. Tears were shed, apologies were exchanged, and for the first time in a long while, there was a glimmer of hope for our family. It was a fragile reconnection, one that we knew would require time, patience, and understanding. As Linda left, we watched her go with a sense of cautious optimism. We were hoping that this conversation would bring healing and a chance for our family to rebuild what had been broken. Our attempts to rebuild a connection with Linda had been a delicate process, but there was an elephant in the room that neither Mark nor I had expected to address so soon: Linda's unresolved desire for the missed anniversary trip. One evening, as we gathered around the dinner table, the conversation took an unexpected turn. Linda, who had been more reserved about her disappointment lately, seemed unable to keep it in any longer. "You know," she began hesitantly, "I still can't help but feel disappointed about missing that trip." Mark and I exchanged glances, knowing that this was a discussion we needed to have sooner or later. We had hoped it wouldn't come up so soon, but it seemed that Linda couldn't contain her feelings any longer. "Mom," Mark said gently, "we've explained why we couldn't afford both the car and the trip. It wasn't an easy decision." Tears welled up in Linda's eyes, and her voice trembled with emotion. "I just thought you were putting your jobs ahead of family," she admitted, her disappointment and hurt becoming more evident. "We do care, Mom," I reassured her, "but this is about our family's future. We have to make the best choices for Liam and us." The conversation went in circles, and it became clear that Linda wasn't willing to let go of her desire for the trip. She saw this as a way to pressure us into funding her dream vacation. But what happened next blindsided us all. A few days after that dinner, Linda, in a moment of carelessness, made a slip of the tongue. She was talking to her sister-in-law, Carol, on the phone, and in the midst of their conversation blurted out, "You won't believe it, Carol. Mark and Sarah are finally getting us that resort trip for our anniversary." The words hung in the air, and Linda's eyes widened as she realized what she had just revealed. Her sister-in-law's reaction was a mixture of surprise and confusion. "You mean Mark and Sarah are paying for your trip?" Carol asked, her curiosity piqued. Linda backtracked, trying to downplay her slip. "Oh, I meant they're considering it, as a surprise." But it was too late. The cat was out of the bag, and Carol was left with the impression that Mark and I were planning a surprise anniversary trip for Linda and her husband. Word spread like wildfire in Linda's circle of friends and family. The news of our supposed generosity reached the ears of many, and they couldn't help but share their thoughts and congratulations. As the days went by, the situation became increasingly awkward. Linda's slip of the tongue had created a false narrative, one that we hadn't intended. Mark and I found ourselves caught in a web of expectations and assumptions, and it seemed that Linda wasn't eager to correct the misunderstanding. The constant pressure from Linda's intrusive requests had left Mark and me feeling exhausted. It seemed there was no end to her expectations, and we began to wonder if there was a way to put an end to this cycle of emotional manipulation. One evening, after much deliberation, we made a bold decision. We decided to give in to Linda's demands, but with a cunning twist that would ensure she'd think twice before asking for more. It was time to prove a point and regain control of our family's boundaries. In a move designed to both appease and discourage, we selected a trip for Linda and her husband. It was the most inexpensive option we could find, a journey to a destination so obscure that it was challenging to locate on a map. To make our scheme foolproof, we ensured that the place had no internet access. The day we presented the itinerary to Linda and her husband, their faces lit up with anticipation. They believed it was the extravagant getaway they had been dreaming of. With excitement in their eyes, they eagerly examined the flight details and accommodations we had arranged. Unbeknownst to them, the remote destination was intentionally chosen to be off the grid. Once they arrived, they would be disconnected from the online world, with no means to contact us. To seal the deal, we turned off our cell phones, ensuring there would be no way for Linda to voice her complaints or demands. As Linda and her husband embarked on their adventure, they were blissfully unaware of our crafty plan. Their vacation was indeed memorable, but not in the way they had anticipated. In the aftermath of these events, Linda stopped contacting us, and we had no intention of following her lead and giving in to her emotional manipulation. We had made our point and regained control of the boundaries that were essential for our family's well-being.